Well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk about our project. The Franklin Mountain Hawk Watch is located in the northern Catskills near Oneonta, New York, overlooking the Susquehanna River Valley. And it's on the property of the Delaware Otsego Audubon Society Sanctuary, which is about a 100-acre property that in addition to the Hawk Watch has marked trails, has wetland, and other things to explore. So if the birds aren't flying, there's other things to do there. So as I said, the Hawk Watch is located near Oneonta, and we're looking down on the Susquehanna River Valley here. Susquehanna rises in up in Cooperstown, about 20 miles to the north, and comes down and swings past through Oneonta. So this is just going to be the view that we typically see hawks coming. We often pick them up over this shoulder here. This is South Hill. We often pick birds up out over here, and they continue down the valley in front of us, or occasionally they'll cut and go south before they reach us. So this is moving down. This is Interstate 88 in the distance there. Now approaching the city of Oneonta. This view right here is about due north. So we started off looking to the northeast, which is where we get the bulk of the birds from in the fall. We're strictly a fall hawk watch. We count from late August through typically our last day is New Year's Day. So we actually count in portions of 6 months of the year. We just wrapped up last week. And the reason we count that late is golden eagles, which I will talk about in more detail further on. So this is, as I said, the birds typically pass in front of us on a good wind day, which is out of the north or northwest, kind of hitting us in the face as we're looking in this direction. And the birds get an updraft from this ridge that we are on, and they just ride it from the northeast to the southwest. So they continue down here. We have some landmarks in the distance that we use for locating birds. This is the State College at Oneonta. There's a couple of communication towers out there. And we just passed 3 open fields that are up on the hillside. That's another one of our landmarks for pointing out birds. Now we're swinging around to the west, to the southwest, and so we lose the birds out in here. They typically will either go behind this closer hill or disappear down the valley. So that's the typical view we get at Franklin Mountain, and I can't really go back, but if we were back at the very beginning of this panorama, you would have seen that there was a cleared area that we just did this year. We gradually have been losing our view to the tree growth, and so we had a major project this year. We did some fundraising and we cleared about a third of an acre, which brought back the view considerably. This is a regional map. This is the Hawk Watch down here. This is Otsego Lake and Cooperstown, and this is the headwaters of the Susquehanna. And it comes down south here and takes this bend. That hill I pointed out to you, South Hill, is right here. And we theorized that why we get so many birds, picking up so many birds here is these sort of tributaries to the Susquehanna. The Susquehanna Valley itself, this is the Cherry Valley Creek, the Skenevis Creek, and the Charlotte Creek, and they all sort of converge in this general area, and that's where we seem to see the birds. We don't know that for sure, but again, on northwest winds hitting these ridges, we give the birds lift to come down and follow the ridge that we're on. I'm not going to talk much about Hawk ID. That's a whole separate program, but I'm going to mention the hawks sort of in the sequence that they pass during the season. Broadwing hawks, one of the earliest hawks. They come through, almost all of them in September, a very compressed period in mid-September. And you know, we do fairly well with broadwings, but not anywhere near as well as some of the other sites, the Pennsylvania sites, and some of the sites down here in the lower Hudson Valley. We do some hawk identification workshops, and this is one of the handouts we use. This is from the Northeast Hawk Watch, and we find it's very good. It concentrates on silhouettes, which are very important, and the general shapes of the birds. And when they're in flight, very often that's all you get. The field marks are not always terribly helpful. It's a two-page thing, and it has all the hawks that would be commonly seen in the Northeast. Cooper's hawks come through pretty well all season. That little graph down in the corner there, that's from the Hawk Migration Association of North America, which is where our data goes, and the data from all the hawk watches in the continent. And they create these little graphs showing the periods of movement through the fall for the different species. So you can see these birds. These birds peak through October, but we do get them all season long, and they do seem to be on the increase. We get osprey, modest numbers, but definitely another bird that's on the increase as the population is going up. You know, a number of species are rebounding from DDT, and osprey definitely one of those. And we occasionally see, by the way, these photos are mostly, well, about half and half. The raptor photos are actually from the Hawk Watch, and half are not. This is one of the ones that isn't. This isn't. I think this is an ocean fish, so we wouldn't see that up there. But we do see osprey carrying fish sometimes in the morning. They'll come up out of the Susquehanna Valley carrying a fish and fly overhead. Kestrels are another early species, a small falcon, and they are one of the birds that seems to be in decline, not just at our hawk watch, but you know, throughout their range. So this is a view of the lookout. We're up on an elevated mound, and we have, you know, some basic amenities, shelter there for the counters when weather gets bad. A kiosk with some with the data on it. We have an owl up on top there. The sharpshins and the merlins will sometimes come in and take a pass at the owl. And as I said, the hawk watch is on the Audubon property, the sanctuary property, and there are trails through a variety of habitats. We keep some open fields. We have some second growth woods. We have a wetland. There's a spruce plantation, so a good mix of habitats. Merlins, we definitely increasing. These birds are quite a fascinating story. When I started birding, you know, 30, 40 years ago, you have to go to the Adirondacks to hope to see a merlin. But now they've become pretty urbanized. There are a lot of the towns, villages, and even cities have merlins now nesting. Cemeteries, parks, those sort of places. So this bird has changed its behavior and its range rather dramatically. And they're always fun to see. They're very feisty. If they're in the air with another bird, they'll almost always take a dive at it, even an eagle. They're pretty fearless. So this is the kiosk, the statistics we keep for the previous year and for the daily count. We typically count 15 species of raptors through the season. We have just in the last 4 or 5 years occasionally gotten black vultures, which are a new species for us. Surprised it's taken a while to get here, but because they're all around us, but they are now starting to show up a little bit. We started counting in 1989, and the sanctuary came into being in 1982, and there had been counting at a site nearby for 3 years by students at the state college. And I happened to run across a paper that gave the numbers, the statistics, and they saw some pretty impressive flights. And so when we got the sanctuary, I thought, well, let's give it a shot. It's not too far away, pretty much the same view. And so in 1989, we started just on weekends, and we started to get some interest from other hawk watchers coming in to see what was there, and it kind of grew over that decade, and to the point where now we're pretty much a full-time hawk watch. We're now averaging about 600 hours a year, and we're all volunteer, so it's quite an effort, and to count through that length of time. So we've been very fortunate to have the help um, and the interest to do this. Now we're getting into a little bit more into fall, probably October. This is still a nice day, but that's probably not a good hawk day. We have a saying that a good day for people is not a good day for hawks. Our best days are cold days with that north wind coming right in your face, or northwest is even better. So a day like this where you're in your shirt sleeves is probably not going to get a lot of hawks. Nice day to be up there. We got a lot of visitors just coming up to enjoy the view and hike the trails. Turkey vultures on the rise in numbers dramatically. Not quite sure why, but we definitely are getting more and more turkey vultures each year. They're a bit of a challenge to count. We're only supposed to count migrants. And of course, turkey vultures, you know, they'll pass by, they'll come back, they'll go by again, they'll drift back and forth in front of us. It's difficult to tell whether they're actually migrating. So we do have a protocol. We don't count turkey vultures until October 1st, and then we only count them on days when they are purposefully headed south, and other raptors are also headed south. So that's how we try to avoid counting non-migrants. Sharpies come through pretty steadily. We're not, you know, these birds and the falcons are more coastline migrants rather than the ridges where we are, and so we don't see the big numbers of them. But they come through. In the long term, sharpshin numbers are going down, but last couple of years we've actually done fairly well. Areas. But ultimately, this is one of the local shots. This is taken by Kyle Dudgeon, a fellow who's a student at the college, and we had the good fortune to have him count for us help us count for 4 years. He was also a great photographer. It's tough to photograph birds up there. We have a lot of photographers come up, and you know, if you've done much of it, it's tough to get anything other than a silhouette against the sky. But we have had a handful of very good shots, and I've tried to include those here. Harriers also seem to be in decline, you know, region-wide and nationwide, I guess. Their peak is late October, early November. And when they're migrating through, they look a lot different than when they're hunting. But they are pretty easy to tell by their you know, their wing posture, and very often you see the white rumpus. This is another picture by Kyle. We got a handful of peregrines each season. I think typically 20 or 30. I just like this photo. It looks like a black and white photo, even though it's color, and certainly gets the silhouette of the bird. Redtail's always one of our big species. We average over 1,000 a year, but they have been dropping off in recent years. The last 2 years, we've had less than 1,000, and it appears that they are staying further north. The other surveys of raptor populations, breeding bird counts, and winter counts seem to indicate that the population is okay, but they don't seem to be migrating like they have in the past. So we used to get days with several hundred of red tails in a day, sometimes 400 or 500 red tails, but that hasn't happened recently. So we'll see what happens with those birds. So now we're a little further into the season. People putting on another layer or two. Uh, this is uh, this is actually a visit by the Nisoa Young Birders Club. So I believe it was November, looking for golden eagles, but it was a pretty overcast day. So there may have been birds coming that day. I'm not quite sure what the winds were, but uh, it probably was fairly early in the morning, and the fog had not burned off yet. Red shoulders, another later season bird. Um, Not big numbers of those either, but they're always a thrill to see. They're beautiful birds, and we always get pretty excited when red shoulders come through. We probably get 40 or 50 a season, I would say, typically. Another shot by Kyle of a goshawk, and very few of these. I think we only had two this year. They're just not. They're not a numerous bird, um, and for me they're a tough ID because there are so few. I've never really gotten a really good feel for identifying goshawks in the air. And rough-legged hawks, depending on the winter, they come down some winters more than others. This year we didn't have any during the season, um, but they do. They're sort of an eruptive species, and I have heard of a few reports lately, so maybe they're just now starting to move in. But this is the bird that our reputation is made from. Golden eagles. We're one of the best sites in eastern North America to see golden eagles. The population of golden eagles in eastern North America breeds way up in northern Quebec and Labrador, um, and they migrate south through the Appalachians and winter, basically from New York down through as far as Georgia. And for some reason, a lot of them pass by us. We typically get 200 plus pass by over the course of the season. They're late birds. The peak is, as you can see, is the first half of November. We typically get the first one sometime in the second half of October, and then they do continue into December. So that's the main reason we count as late as we do. Most hawk watchers call it quits, at the end of November or earlier. But we keep going, particularly on days with promising winds, and it pays off because we've had some good days in December, and you'll see even there's a little bit of that graph into January, and that's because, as I said, we do count a little bit into January, and we have had golden eagles in that month too. This is a shot from Franklin Mountain. This is Kurt Morgan, a photographer from the Auburn area, and he loves to come up and shoot the golden eagles. We had a fantastic day a couple of years ago when we had 128 pass, and as far as we know, that's a record single day flight for golden eagles. It was just an unbelievable day. But we typically, over the course of the season, we'll have 2 or 3 or 4 days of double-digit golden eagles, maybe 20, 25. And Kurt loves to come up on those days. And that day that we had 128, he photographed every single golden eagle that went by. So it's great documentation too. I thought I'd talk a little bit more about the golden eagle, since they are a bird that we're known for, and the fact that we see so many has kind of led us down a path of more involvement with golden eagles. So I just want to talk a little bit about a couple of other things we have done that have been offshoots of the hawk watch. So this is a close-up of golden eagle. Those hackles, certainly a good field mark when they show in good light. They really can stand out. This is one going through the snow. This is at Franklin Mountain. And we do see them like this on days when the wind's out of the northwest. We will end up with a little bit of lake effect snow from Lake Ontario. even down as far as we are. And sometimes we'll have a flurry, with very little visibility, and then it will clear off and we'll see a golden eagle out there. So they fly right through the snow. It doesn't seem to bother them. And this was a good shot of an adult. Another picture by Kurt Morgan. And you can see the golden hackles there, plus the mantle on the back that again, in fairly decent light, when they bank away from you, you can see. This is an immature bird. People do confuse immature bald eagles with golden eagles. And immature bald eagles have white, generally dark birds, and have white on them also. But with bald eagles, it's the white is scattered throughout the body, whereas as you can see with a golden eagle, it's confined to 3 spots: the 2 spots out on the wings, and then the base of the tail. So really, with a little practice, it's not difficult to separate golden eagles from immature bald eagles. They fly differently too. The bald eagles have flat wings. Golden eagles hold their wings up above their body a little bit. The head of the golden eagle is much smaller, the head and the bill, than a bald eagle, and the tail is longer. So, if you spend a little time up there looking at both species, you fairly quickly get a feel for the differences. So here we are back on a nice day, enjoying the sunshine. And I'll finish this part with a shot of a bald eagle. And this picture was taken by Courtney Moore. She was only 12 years old when she took this shot, and I really love it because of that. And we're getting increasing numbers of bald eagles, as I'm sure are showing up down here too. The population is doing very well. The territories are filling up, and we get bald eagles all through the season, from September through December. There's a wintering area up in Delaware County, south of the Hawkwatch, around the New York City reservoirs, and there's quite a population of bald eagles there in the winter, and so we get a lot of those passing by on their way south. They are a bit of a challenge, like the vultures, though, because there are so many local birds now. It's kind of tough sometimes to separate the migrants from the resident birds. So we try to be careful with that. Well, this is I'll just tell you this quick story that happened a few years ago. A couple of the regular hawk watchers were up there, and all of a sudden this macaw appeared in the trees in front of the hawk watch. And this fellow, Richard Hendrick, who comes and visits from Washington State every year, although he passed away last year, unfortunately, but he was a regular visitor, and he happened to have a banana in his lunch, and he held it up, and the bird flew in, landed on his shoulder, and stayed there the rest of the day. At the end of the day, they didn't really know what to do with it, so they called up one of the local vets, and they said, well, bring it in, which they did. And the vet had it for a couple of weeks, trying to find an owner, advertising it. And after a couple of weeks, the bird started talking, started saying the same names over and over. And one of the vet techs realized it was saying her landlord's names over and over. And so they checked, and sure enough, it was their bird. They lived about a mile downhill from the hawkwatch. So this bird got returned home. It literally talked its way back home. And I'm surprised it didn't get nailed by a red tail or a Cooper's hawk or something in the meantime. So back to golden eagles. We were so, we got them so frequently with such regularity and such numbers. We decided we wanted to find out a little bit more about them. We kind of knew where they were coming from and where they were going, and they would occasionally be sightings in the winter of golden eagles in our region, usually associated with bald eagles around the reservoir. But we knew that people had been documenting them with uh, uh, trail cameras, and so we got a permit from DEC to pick up roadkill deer, and we got some trail cameras, and started putting them out in various locations, usually pretty remote locations in our region, Delaware and Otsego counties. And sure enough, the golden eagles started showing up and getting photographed. Uh, and so that was notable in itself because no one had documented that they were wintering in our region in any significant way. Yeah, some of these are a little gory, so I apologize. But a lot of things took advantage of these bait piles, including bald eagles, of course, and many ravens. Just a shocking number of ravens that are around. We knew ravens were here, but didn't quite know this number. So yeah, so they were well used. We ended up with about I think 8 sites around the area. Here's another couple of golden eagles, and you can see one characteristic of these birds is how far down the legs the feathers come, all the way to the feet. So and the carcasses would get picked clean, put out a free meal, and it's going to be taken advantage of. And there were, other species. Red-tailed hawks were regular visitors at these. There's a leucistic bird up there, and they would scrap over the food. Nothing, no harm, but definitely there was some food fights. This is a rough-legged hawk, and this one's just in there because of the interesting way the camera caught the motion of the bird. We could set them for infrared at night, and we found that owls were coming in. And there was a variety of songbirds also that would come in and peck at these carcasses: chickadees, woodpeckers, jays. And of course, mammals came also, plenty of coyotes, bobcats. This is a fisher. Fishers were thought to be pretty well extirpated by trapping, but since they've been protected, they have come back, and we saw a lot of fishers on these cameras. And so we decided to go a step further. We were getting golden eagles so regularly at the sites. We were aware again that there was technology of fitting golden eagles with GPS transmitters. And so we were very lucky. There was a DEC employee in Stanford, at the Stanford office near where we are, Scott Van Arsdale, and he was licensed to capture eagles, and he had been capturing bald eagles for DEC. He also would climb the nest trees and band the eagle chicks, bald eagle chicks. So he's very knowledgeable about eagles and handling eagles, and he was willing to help us out. So we set up blinds at a number of the locations, and the technique was that we would wait until golden eagles were coming regularly to a site, and Scott would go out to this blind. He would have to get there before sunrise because the birds were quite spooky. He had to be in the blind early before the birds showed up, and then wait for them to appear. Yeah, and you can see there in the back behind that bird's right wingtip the blind. And we did some fundraising. We purchased a rocket net, and that Scott could trigger from the blind, and had to be conditions had to be just right. The bird had to be alone. It had to be on the carcass where the net was aimed. It had to have its head down feeding, and so everything had to be just right before we could make an attempt to capture the bird. And this is the first bird we captured. This is the net shooting out over this bird um, that we captured. It was named, actually it was initially named Max. We gave the rights to name the birds to some of the donors who had enabled us to do this. But once they examined the bird, they found it was a female, so it got changed to Maxine. So this bird was caught in Delaware County. And, you know, it's tricky business. That's the rocket net box behind Scott there. Tricky business handling these birds. They're very powerful. The talons, you can see, are dangerous, and the birds have to be untangled without harming them, of course. We were fortunate to have Scott with his experience to do this. We couldn't have done it otherwise. And you can see in the lower part of this photo, he would put a leather hood over the birds to calm them down. Another shot of those talons. And this is Scott's blood. He did get injured by one of the birds, actually not the talons. The bird got him with its beak, and so he's putting a Band-Aid on there. But they took various measurements of the bird, weighed it, took a blood sample to check for contaminants, a feather sample, and that's the transmitter being fitted. It goes on with a cloth harness, and it's pretty lightweight. That's a solar cell on the back to charge up the batteries, and the harness, eventually the thread rots away and the thing falls off. So it's not with the bird forever. Another shot of the transmitter. And they would photograph the birds for purpose of documenting the plumage. You can actually separate individual birds by the differences in the plumage. And by the way, the photos that we took from the trail cameras, there were well over 10,000 photos that we took in total. And we documented that we had an intern from Hartwood College examine those, and she documented that there were at least a dozen different golden eagles overwintering in our region. So the bird is checked out pretty thoroughly, and then off it goes. And some of the birds we've had return now for five round trips, migration trips up to their breeding grounds in northern Quebec, and then back down to winter in New York. So they're flying well and they're behaving well. The transmitters are not disturbing them. And this is the kind of data we get. This is the track of a bird, the winter range of a bird in southern Delaware County. That's down in the left-hand corner. That's Route 17, Roscoe. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of where this is. So this bird was captured roughly in the middle of the photo, and you can see it stayed pretty much in that area, took occasional forays a few miles away. And this is another range of a bird that was trapped in Otsego County there near the bottom of the photo, and where it moved around through the winter. And then come March or late March, early April, they would start heading north. And so this is the tracks they take on their northbound migration. And this just happened to be two birds that were captured this winter, and there was no connection with the birds. They didn't overlap through the winter, but they both started migrating, one on the 31st of March, the other one on the 1st of April. And they took a very similar track up through the Adirondacks, and they crossed the border into Canada within an hour and a half of each other. Again, it's pretty much just coincidence, because we don't think there was any connection with the birds, but just just interesting how this movement. You can see once they start migrating, they don't fool around. They pretty well head straight north, and they've got 1,500 miles to go to get to their nesting area, so they do need to move. But one of our birds in Delaware County, after we had been tracking it for a couple of weeks, all of a sudden we stopped receiving a signal, and we contacted the company with the transmitters, see what they thought, and they said, well, we should probably go search around in the last known location of the bird. So we did. We went down and searched around, did not find the bird, but what we did find was a pile of feral hog carcasses that had been shot. And we learned that nearby a dead bald eagle had been found, dead of lead poisoning. And we strongly suspect that that's what happened to our golden eagle. The story with these hogs is that people set up these hunting preserves, fenced in areas. People capture the hogs down south, bring them up and put them in these enclosures, and then people go in and shoot them for sport. But some of them got loose, and these birds were out on the land, pigs were out on the landscape, and they were reproducing. And DEC was quite upset about it. And if you've been down south and you've seen the damage that feral hogs can do to the ground, it's like a roto-rooter. You can understand why. And so DEC brought in some federal sharpshooters, and they were successful in shooting all of these pigs. They were reproducing too. But they put them in a pile, and the farmer was supposed to bury them, but he didn't get to it. And so eagles came in and fed on them, and they were ingesting the lead fragments that resulted from the bullets. And so we don't know for sure that that's what happened to our golden eagle, but we strongly suspect it. And so that, by the way, these preserves are no longer allowed in New York. They've been banned, and you can't bring feral hogs into the state, which is definitely a good thing. So we looked at this a little deeper, and we learned how toxic lead is to eagles, both bald eagles and golden eagles, which are scavengers. And it only takes a piece of lead the size of a grain of rice to kill an eagle. And what typically happens is they get, like this bird, lethargic, unable to keep their balance. They suffer neurological damage, and generally they die. There have been some attempts to rehabilitate them, and they have gotten the blood out of the system, but usually when they are released, they don't last long. They've sort of lost the ability to hunt successfully. And you can see there that in the lower left-hand corner, that's a shot of a deer, and the lead bullets, when they hit the deer, they basically shatter, and the little fragments of lead go, in this photo, as far as 14 inches from the wound. So the lead goes throughout the animal, and especially if they're shot in the gut area. The hunters will typically field dress the deer and leave the entrails out in the field, and those are scavenged by eagles and other scavengers. So they can get a good dose of lead that way. And it's not just a hazard to wildlife. The one in the lower right-hand corner is an X-ray of ground venison, and you can see the little fragments of lead through there too. So people especially children who ingest this venison are at risk from this lead. Lead is a very toxic material especially for kids, developing children. So we have been attempting to get the word out to hunters, and that they should switch to copper bullets. Copper bullets are a little more expensive than lead bullets, but they perform actually better ballistically than lead bullets. And copper bullets do not fragment; they stay in one lump when they enter or pass through an animal. And so lead bullets hopefully will something will happen with about lead bullets. There have been some states that have banned them. California has banned them because largely because of impacts on condors. But a lot of our eagles are suffering from lead poisoning in this manner. This is just a study that was done in Wisconsin, shows that, 94% of the deer had lead fragments in them, and 90% of the gut piles had lead. So it's a widespread problem, and the numbers of lead poisoned deer at lead poisoned eagles at rehabilitators spikes after hunting season. So that's another connection that is pretty apparent. Golden eagles have other threats. They're caught in traps. One of our eagles was caught in Canada in a trap, dead, and it was a legal trap. Actually, the trapper turned the bird in to the authorities because I guess he saw that the transmitter was on it and figured it was something important. But they do get caught in traps. Lead poisoning goes on. Sometimes carcasses are put out with poison for to kill coyotes and other predators, to protect sheep or livestock. They do collide with objects on occasion, and we are quite concerned about wind turbines in the Golden Eagle corridor. They have a pretty narrow corridor, and there have been, we battled one wind project in Broome County. We documented that golden eagles were flying right through the swept areas of where the turbines are going to be, and we're actually wintering in that area, but we did not prevail, and that project is going to be built, and it will be a risk to eagles, bald eagles and golden eagles. And then there's still some remnants of DDT that affected the birds. DDT is still used overseas, so birds that travel outside the country are at risk. So we'll end up back on Franklin Mountain, and I hope you'll come up and visit us. This is probably bad timing for this program since we just called it quits for the season. But next, we'll be starting back up again next August, and we love to have visitors. The more eyes, the better, and we hope you'll come up. So you can get information on our website, which is doas.us. Pretty easy to remember. There's directions to the Hawk Watch. More information. We always tell people dress warmly because it's usually chillier up there than they expect. So we'll end with a happy slide, and hope that you will come and visit us.